Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Kevin Williamson with RJW Logistics Group. I've got the safety tip for the New Warehouse podcast. And as a safety tip, I think training your forklift drivers as they come into your environment and showing them the practices of safety tips that you embrace is important. Not only showing them the processes that must be followed within your warehouse, but also following up on those processes. At RJW, we have compliance officers, 3 of them, that oversee 7 warehouses and consistently travel between those warehouses to ensure that those processes are being followed. It's easy to set up processes that exhibit safety, but enforcing those processes is just as important, if not more important, to ensure that those processes for safety are followed. So making sure that you're following up with compliance on safety protocols and processes that you set up are very important to run a safe and efficient warehouse.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by 2 guests from RJW Logistics Group, Kevin Williamson, who is the CEO over there, and Greg Forbis, who is the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development. We're going to talk a little bit about what RJW does, and we're also going to dive into the topic of the middle mile. We're going to talk about what is that exactly, because a lot of the conversation you hear is around the last mile. So we're going to talk about the middle mile and what that is, and why it's so important, and how do you master that. So Kevin and Greg, welcome to the show. How are you? Kevin has a great name, I will say, first off.
Oh, yeah. Love your name as well. You represent the East Coast, I represent the Midwest. So we almost got the country covered.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us on board.
Definitely happy to have both you guys on. Happy to learn about RJW and also the middle mile as well. So before we get started talking about the main topic, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about RJW Logistics Group and what it is you guys do?
Sure, Greg. I'll take that one. We started out in 1981 as a small brokerage out of my dad's house, my bedroom actually, and slowly grew into an asset-based trucking company in 91.
Okay.
And then in 94, I joined the company and took over the company back in 2009. At that time, we added warehousing and got into retail logistics and retail consolidation. Fast forward to today, we're currently have about 3 million square feet of warehouse in 7 different locations and concentrate, as you said, on the middle mile, getting goods for CPG companies, food and beverage, into the big box retailers so that they can fulfill their stores. So that's kind of what we do.
Okay, very interesting. And you said it started in your bedroom? Is that what you said?
It did. My dad was a traffic manager at Fern Foods and came home one day and told my mother that he was going to start a brokerage because they deregulated the industry. And she said, okay, let's kick Kevin out and in with his brother. And they took over my room, and it all went from probably a 12 by 12 foot room into 3 million square feet with over 1,600 employees. So it's one of those American stories of hard work, grit, determination, a little bit of luck, and a lot of right hires to get us where we're at today.
All right, that's a very interesting story. So at the time, did you foresee that you getting kicked out of your own room would lead to the position you're in today?
Yeah, you know what? I look back at it and kind of laugh because that move actually made me a better Nerf basketball player against my older brother, because all we did was play this Nerf basketball, and we lived on the court, which was my brother's room. So did I ever realize it? No. I got paid back then 25 cents a week to empty out the trash cans out of the business, and it's kind of, my salary is a little higher than that today, but it started off at $0.25 a week. So
wow, that's a really, really interesting story. I love that, and it's great to see, coming from, I guess, that small beginning to where you guys are now with the 3 million square feet, as you said, and yourself as the CEO as well. So, and it sounds like you guys really cover the basis when it comes to logistics, from the trucking to the warehousing as well. So I'm curious, what sets you guys apart from other logistics companies that are out there?
I think a lot of it has to do with the experience of, because we first got into brokerage, and when you get into brokerage, you kind of have that view of transportation and supply chain. And then 10 years later, we got into the trucking side of things. And then you understood what drivers like, what drivers need, what trucking companies need from a different perspective of a brokerage. And then lastly, you get into the warehouse portion of it, where drivers are just showing up to pick up, but they don't know what's happening behind the scenes on the warehouse. So having those 3 entities, we're a true 3PL, and then taking technology, setting it on top of that, so that not only your systems are communicating with APIs and EDIs to flow, PO process, gathering that data and sharing that data with data analytics with your customers is really game changing. So the biggest thing that I see as a benefit for us is operating in those 3 entities without any silos, without any walls, having the open architecture of APIs to communicate between across all boards really makes us unique in what we can do. And if you look back 15 years ago at RJW, we really didn't have an identity on what we were going to get into. Fast forward to today, we know exactly what we are. We're a retail logistics company, and anything and everything that has to do with retail logistics, with the retailers themselves, with the suppliers, and everything in between, we're trying to change what is expected in a 3PL by dashing some of that data analytics, the data that we share with our customers to make them better suppliers, and then making them better suppliers for higher in-stocks at the store is important as well. So kind of jumped around a lot over there, but that's basically what it is. A little different.
All right, very interesting. So I'm curious. We've heard from Kevin, obviously, and his journey from his older brother's bedroom to the boardroom, right, as CEO. So Greg, let's hear a little from you, because I know you recently joined the company just in the past couple of years. You spent a lot of time at Walmart, I believe, correct? So give us a little bit about your background and I guess kind of what you bring to RJW, and maybe even a little insight into the career change there a little bit.
Yes, I did not. I didn't have the fortunate that Kevin had to have a company started in my bedroom. Although my brother and I probably did many other things, started our own companies, but never quite was successful as RJW. But I did get the great opportunity to work for the world's largest retailer, and really started 30 years ago, right out of college.
Okay.
And worked in many different positions, from internal audit to finance and accounting positions, to really my last two big roles were on the inbound supply chain side. So responsible for Walmart's collect network, which means Walmart's paying the freight bill, coordinating with suppliers and picking up product from their facilities or their warehouses and delivering them into the Walmart distribution centers. And then my last few years, I had responsibility inside of our private fleet for the two large operation centers that dispatch all of the Walmart trucks. Retired after 30 years, was thinking about, maybe doing some part-time consulting work. I had the great opportunity to get connected with Kevin through one of our advisory board members, Chris Saltemeyer, who was my EVP of logistics at Walmart and Sam's Club. And I understood warehouse retail consolidation. That was part of my responsibilities inside Walmart. But what really drew me towards what Kevin shared was just really the success they'd had in being able to be located in Chicago, having grown from, one warehouse, 50,000 square feet to 2.5 million and now to 3 million square feet. Yeah. The growth of the company, the transparency in the entire process, from the sales call to the pricing to the customer service, just being able to tie all that together. And then his passion itself for technology. You wrap all that up and then you're like, okay, so that's a lot in one spot. And then Kevin rolls out and shares with me the fantastic service performance that has what's really built RJW's reputation inside the workplace. And 98% on time and in full are numbers that I couldn't achieve inside Walmart because of not so much how we were structured, but because we were more of a low cost operating model. Right. We achieved service, but not at those levels. And then be able to see suppliers grow with RJW and then move into other retailers. So that's really what pulled me towards this company. And Kevin, while we're 1,600 employees, it's still a very small field company, and it's easy to reach out and touch somebody and get really great feedback. I think our customers feel very connected to what we do and know that if they need to pick up the phone and call Kevin just to say hi, Kevin's available and can have that conversation with them at any time, as well as calling a warehouse general manager and having a very similar conversation.
Okay.
What my role really is to continue to connect back into Walmart, as well as the many companies in Northwest Arkansas that really call on Walmart in the supplier base here, as well as, Walmart has sent a lot of alumni out into the retail sector. And whether it's a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a Dollar Tree or a Meijer or a Kroger, there are Walmart alumni inside those organizations and some that I've worked with. And so we connect back in with them and really try and work our programs to help we benefit the retailer.
Okay, very interesting. And I'm curious, going from such a long time with being on the retailer side, what's kind of the difference in maybe dynamic or flow for you from being a part of the retail side to now being like part of the 3PL side?
I think for me, Walmart was big. I mean, there's no escaping it. The scope and scale of the transportation spend that they would have is in the billions of dollars, really compared to what we have here right now. Not in the future, but what we have right now, right? Yeah. And to me, the pace, the pace may be a little bit different. I don't quite get phone calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week about loads that aren't being generated. But the biggest, I really feel like the biggest thing for me is sitting on this side in a 3PL environment, looking into a retailer that I came out of that has a lot of requirements, whether it's packaging, labeling, on time, in full, and then being able to take that retailer's requirements, and not only Walmart, but think of Target, think of Meijer, take those retailers' requirements, put them through my lens as a retailer, and be able to sit down with the customer or a client and say, tell me what your challenges are. They lay out their challenges. Hey, my on time is bad. My fill rate is really bad. And by the way, I'm getting fined for every time I don't have a correct label on a case.
Right.
Help me eliminate these penalties. Why am I facing all these penalties? Taking that retailer's requirements, boiling it down to something that's simple for that supplier, and then allowing that supplier just to focus on what they do best, right? That's building sales, coming up with great items and marketing, and letting us take that supply chain worry off their hands, and then to watch them go from, hey, they're in 1,000 stores to now they're in 3,500 stores to 4,500 stores. Oh, and by the way, we're now in 4 other retailers in the course of 18 months to 2 years. That's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think you said something really interesting in there too about, letting the retailer do what they're good at, is the retailing, right? And you guys kind of handling the supply chain side of things. And I think that's become even more important, especially as the supply chain changes, the way that it's looking and operating with the pandemic and consumer behavior changing so much, and driving those different avenues for retailers, and expanding upon the omni-channel options that are out there. So it's definitely good that you guys are supporting those retailers and helping them get the on time and full, like you mentioned, and those metrics up and meeting the customer demands. So I'm curious, we're going to talk a little bit about middle mile today. So much last mile is so buzzy, I think, and a lot of the conversation is always revolving around the last mile. But talk to us a little bit about what exactly is the middle mile before we get into how to master it for those that may not be so familiar.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, when I think about the middle mile, how I explain it to people that say, what is the middle mile? Is you really think about manufacturer or supplier's manufacturing point, and then how do I get it from manufacturing to the big box retailer's distribution center? What's my most efficient way to get there? And when you step back, there are many paths you can take to get to that distribution center. Some that are fast, that cost you a lot of money, right? Some that are slow, that you now got a cheap option, not as quite as reliable, and whether that's less than truckload, intermodal, whatever that case may be, small parcel. And then think about consolidation. Consolidation is one small piece of that puzzle, but for many suppliers, and we deal with suppliers that range from very large CPG, food and beverage companies, down to suppliers that have had a great idea, built it themselves, had a great online presence, now are available in retail stores. So we're dealing with all size and breadth of folks that don't understand, that aren't really supply chain. Supply chain is it's in their wheelhouse, but maybe not their expertise.
Right. And
they're looking at us to say, hey, how do you help me get it from point A to point B and be as successful as I can be with everything involved?
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So very good explanation. I'm curious, I kind of explained a little bit there about the importance of the middle mile, but what does that really mean for, I guess, companies to really solidify that middle mile and make sure that it's covered and make sure that it's being handled, not only just handled, but handled in an efficient manner? What are some of the I guess, the positive outcomes and outputs for making sure that the middle mile is covered?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. I mean, I guess there's two portions of the middle mile. Whether it's whether you're bringing it in directly from the manufacturer to that retailer, and then that retailer bringing it to the final mile to the stores, or whether that retailer is going directly to consumer. That middle mile, I think the benefits of having a tight middle mile and able to fill that middle mile between our location and that retailer is critical, especially in these days. Because these days you've got the retailers that are bringing in goods to not only bring to their brick and mortar stores, but they're also fulfilling orders direct to consumer out of those stores. So Walmart, as an example, has over 4,200 store locations that they're fulfilling the final mile to the consumer out of those stores. And that's changed over the pandemic, right, where direct to consumer has skyrocketed, and replenishment of goods in the middle mile from manufacturing to that retail DC is critical. And if they're not getting those goods on time and in full, then their sales will suffer, and then the retailer will lose consumer confidence. So instead of going to Walmart.com, they might be going to Amazon, or they might be going to Target, or they might be going to Myers, right, to get those orders, because that middle mile is broken. So something that I think is unique with us is we have the ability to not only perform at a very ultra high level of that middle mile to get replenishment to those that are servicing the final mile, doing it in a way that we can fulfill POs and demand 7 days a week in that middle mile is critical. So if your supply chain is strong at getting raw goods into manufacturing to be able to produce those goods, but it is weak to get it from finished production CPG to the retailer that's going to handle the final mile, then you're going to have a lot of out of stocks. It's going to make you a poor supplier. Your marketing and sales and innovation will not take off, and you'll end up losing because that middle mile is broken. So I believe it's one of the most critical aspects of the supply chain. Obviously, the whole supply chain is important, right, but if you have a breakdown in that middle mile, it can get you delisted. It can reduce your SKU count with that retailer. But if it's really good, you'll see an increase in items. You'll see an increase in flow and market share, I think. I don't know, Greg, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think the thing I'd add too, Kevin, is that so many times the suppliers are so focused on either the manufacturing piece, like how do I manufacture it well? How do I save money in manufacturing? Or how do I sell it at the store level? How is it presented? What does it look like? What's my, my growth or my market share going to be? That they forget really about how they're going to get it from manufacturing into the store. And to Kevin's point, it's a great middle mile provider for a supplier can really help their growth and fuel their growth, whereas a poor one can really take you from being a hot new item that appeared on a Shark Tank or on a TikTok video or on a YouTube channel, right? Yeah. To an item now that you're struggling to keep in stock on the shelf because you didn't have a good solid provider with you in that middle mile to help you kind of push it over the hump.
And now a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Supply Chain Mavens. The past year has been full of fascinating and complex supply chain news, from shortages and forecasting challenges to issues with COVID-19 test components to the never-before-seen speed to market of the vaccine. In the past year, logistics and supply chain professionals like you have been nothing short of miracle workers. Supply Chain Mavens helps your team to continuously improve by developing tailored training solutions to enhance your team's competencies so they can successfully work across all aspects of supply chain. They offer exam preparation for the coveted APICS, certified in logistics, transportation, and distribution designation, as well as education in topics across the supply chain. Visit them at supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse to learn how they can help you advance your team's performance. That's supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse. Now back to the show. Yeah, very good points. And I think it is very critical, as you mentioned. Even the kind of the example that you gave, Kevin, is the, going somewhere and the product's not available and you're going to go somewhere else and get it. And I know from personal experience, I'm guilty of doing that as well. I know that I've gone into Barnes & Noble looking for a book and they're like, oh, I don't have it. And right there in the store, I look on the Amazon app and it's there and it's actually like $1 cheaper or something. So I just order it. And so, it is super critical, especially to have that inventory available. And also, as you mentioned, with D2C going up and, with that, so many different ways for consumers to buy things, whether it's ordering online, getting it delivered to their house, or picking up in store as well. You have a lot more, I think, calling on the retailer to have inventory available in different avenues and having that middle mile kind of delivering to the points where it needs to be delivered to is really, really the important thing so that you can have that flexibility. So I'm curious, thinking here as you guys are talking that, I've been having a lot of conversations around kind of micro fulfillment and micro warehousing and, moving some smaller facilities closer to highly densely populated areas. I'm curious, how will that type of thing affect the middle mile? Do you think that it adds like an additional mile, or does that stay within the middle mile? Because I guess what I'm hearing is some of the models is there's these replenishment warehouses, and they're going to feed into these smaller warehouses that may be pre-existing vacant retail stores or malls or something of that nature. How do you think that kind of changes the landscape a little bit?
I'll give you my perspective.
Sure.
When I think about micro fulfillment, Walmart and Target have been doing micro fulfillment themselves for a couple years now, even kind of before the pandemic, in that they have 2,500 and 4,200 stores respectively, right? Where they have online, you can buy online, pick up in store. You have that opportunity, right? Online grocery. And you now have an option of a home delivery in some cases, or like what Target has done is has repositioned some of their stores and built some micro fulfillment centers about how to really service that last mile. There's still those micro fulfillment centers aren't going to be big enough to hold weeks of supply on hand. It's probably going to be days or a week. And so you're still going to need call it a regional distribution center or some sort of national distribution center footprint that you're going to have to feed into as a supplier. And more than likely that retailer is going to take care of it from their national footprint, their national DC or their regional DC into that micro fulfillment center. And they're going to manage that inventory very much more closely. The supplier's concern, I believe, now there could be some that go directly into micro fulfillment. It's just a different node for us, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different delivery method. But I think they're still going to have some sort of intermediary distribution center to feed that micro fulfillment center because these aren't going to be big enough to handle the 100,000 SKUs a retailer has in store, or 40,000 SKUs or 50,000 SKUs, and be able to carry weeks of supply to always have that product available. I think they'll be more supplemental in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I'll add just a little bit to that. I mean, you look at a Walmart regional distribution center, it's servicing about 100 stores. So that regional DC is servicing about 100 micro fulfillment centers around it. What I see happening is the demand for the middle mile is going to increase, and it's going to increase a lot because they're going to convert a lot of these brick and mortar stores from people walking through them to fulfillment. And they're testing some things in the back room to be able to get some automation with that fulfillment and partnering and continuing to innovate. What I see happening within the middle mile is, we've got 400 suppliers that are in our program. and we continue to add to that and continue to expand, we're going to see more frequent orders that are smaller, that are going to come over more often. And what that's going to do is it is going to tighten the supply chain. So we're dealing in case quantities, not each quantities, but the micro fulfillment is dealing in each quantities, right, not case quantities. So with all of the regulations that you're seeing for fines and everything that's going across the board for all these retailers right now, one of the reasons that they're looking at making sure that they're getting good data, they're getting good information, they're getting good packaging, all of this, not to find their suppliers as a revenue source, but to make sure that the data is flowing freely, and they're prepared in anticipation for e-commerce to continue to blow up. And we saw huge growth in e-commerce throughout this pandemic. But I think the middle mile is going to continue to be more of a need as we go forward, but more flexible middle mile is going to be important.
Interesting. Yeah. I was curious your perspective on that, since I've been hearing like a lot of conversation about that, and like you said, e-commerce has just exploded with the pandemic, and I personally think it's just gonna stick. I don't think people are gonna go back, because the people that were skeptical before now see how easy it is, and it's gonna be hard to go back to the difficulty of having to walk through a grocery store. It's just
going to continue to climb. It's not going backwards for sure.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So it's a very interesting insight on the middle mile there, and kind of what it is and how you guys help companies kind of master that. So yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned in the beginning, and I think we talked a lot about inventory being in the right place as well. But you guys are able to achieve some pretty high metrics. You guys have 98% on time in full as one of your metrics, and one of your selling points too as well. I mean, I think it was even a selling point for Greg, he mentioned as well, joining the team, right? So how do you guys achieve that, and what kind of recommendations do you have for companies that may be looking to boost their on time in full?
Yeah, so one of the founding principles of this program was based actually on a Harvard study that was done that can be found on our website, rjwgroup.com.
Okay.
And what it goes into is and you think about e-commerce and everything else, you got to have all of these different fulfillment centers around the country in order to get same day or next day. When you start looking at the middle mile, we're fulfilling retail distribution centers in case quantities. So as long as their forecasting is there, it's about, we're big believers in the single node supply chain distribution based on that Harvard study. Why? It simplifies the supply chain. We're dealing with case quantity orders, and we have the ability to have a campus environment, to have shared labor between those buildings. We have the ability to have dedicated lanes, contracted lanes, and really put our drivers in a good place where they're going the same lanes all of the time. We're building out the network, and it's just a machine that's operating 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And I think in order to master that middle mile, you need to simplify your supply chain network. And having one node and replenishing our inventory with your goods into that node really gives the advantage of you going into one node rather than 5 nodes, that you're managing inventory between all these different buildings, personnel between those buildings, and everything that goes with it. Greg mentioned earlier, we've got very large publicly traded CPG companies that are in our network. We have middle-sized and small-sized, PE-backed and self-funded. All of them gain an advantage in their categories as a supplier because of the things that we've done. And the only reason that we can do the things that we do is because of that single node distribution model. So we're feeding those micro warehouses to be able to send it out, and then fulfilling shipping and processing lead times of 7 days and under, 7 to 10 days. But again, it's about speed, it's about simplicity, and it's about simplifying the supply chain. And once you've done that, managing a supply chain is as simple as just turning that business over to somebody like us that runs that type of program. And Greg, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I puked all over it.
No, I think the thing that I would add, Kevin, is when I was inside Walmart, Walmart was paying the freight bill. We were writing the check for that supplier to get their goods to us. And when we, in that case, we wanted the lowest cost, right? We wanted the lowest freight factor. So we would encourage suppliers to be in 2 or 3 or 4 locations across the U.S. so that they were faster to get back in stock. This was our selling pitch internally, right? Faster to be in stock, shorter lead times, and it's going to be less expensive for me, and your margin is going to look better on the shelf. What I didn't really think about, which became very clear to me after sitting down with Kevin and him walking me through this one warehouse model and explaining it to me, because I'm pretty sure one of the conversations that I said with Kevin, I looked at him and I said, "You're doing all this from Chicago? No way." And his eyes lit up, and then it was just like, he was ready to go from there, because he'd been waiting for me to ask that question.
Oh, yeah.
But what I didn't really realize is I'm sitting having those conversations with suppliers about multiple ship points is the complexity and the cost that it adds into their supply chain, right? So now if I have 10 SKUs and I've got 10 SKUs in each of my 4 locations, it's going to be a pretty good bet that I'm going to be out of my highest velocity SKUs on the East Coast, and I'm going to have to transfer them from another warehouse to get them to that ship point, because Walmart or the retailer's not going to want to pay that difference, or I don't necessarily want to pay that difference to get it to them. So being in one location, reducing your complexity of how you replenish, you're able to over time reduce the inventory that you're holding, because we are fast, to Kevin's point, 7 to 10 days to get you back into the store. We can look at your orders multiple times a week with that retailer to ensure we have the highest levels of in stock, and you don't have redundant warehousing costs. You don't have to worry about your provider not having labor to pick the orders, because we're going to have a supplier where we can make things happen very quickly.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think, have a really good point about where the inventory is at, because I've certainly, in my career worked for companies where, we have multiple warehouses in the network, and like you said there, Greg, a moment ago, is, we're always transferring products between warehouse, because it's hard to, and it's complex, as you said, to balance, what's the right amount to have in this one and what's the right amount to have in this one. And, I've certainly seen the scenarios where, there's a customer that wants something, they're in New York, and we don't have any product on the East Coast. All the product's on California. So it's like, do we transfer it and ship it, or do we ship it direct from California? It's either way, we're looking at an added expense to that order, which is not necessarily something that is ideal or something that we want to do. So it is definitely an interesting concept, and as we can see by the numbers, it's working for you guys. And Kevin seems to be into it. And like you said, he was waiting for you to ask that question. Yeah. He was waiting. So it's definitely really interesting, and we'll have to check out. And I'll certainly link to that study that you mentioned on the website on the newwarehouse.com as well, on the blog. But really, really interesting to talk to you guys and to learn more about RJW and also about your backgrounds. It's great to see how, starting from Kevin's childhood bedroom, where you're now grown to this, is really, really amazing what you guys have done. And great to learn about the middle mile as well. So I'm curious, before we wrap things up here, how do we learn more about RJW Logistics Group?
I got that one, Greg. Just go to Inside Joke. Go to rjwgroup.com. So you can check it out and get a lot more information from us. So appreciate the time.
All right, great.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Definitely. Thank you, guys. And we'll definitely put links to all of that on the newwarehouse.com as well. So Kevin and Greg, thank you again for your time.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.